My name is Pablo Correa, and I'm Executive Director of Rural Arizona Engagement. The history of this organization and why it was created and built was, I was just a working class person raising a middle class family and wanted to represent my community in a larger way. And so I decided to become more civically engaged. Through that process, especially in rural areas, I came to find out that there is not a lot of opportunities to engage civically in our communities and rural spaces. And so, this was back in 2018, we really identified that problem and got to work to trying to find a solution by building a volunteer base, by trying to be an asset to the community, trying to be kind of a hub where community members can find opportunities to engage civically. And that really grew, from 18 and 19 and then into 2020. And we really, from building those roots, were able to be an asset to the community around census work and getting our communities out for the count. And then started building capacity and just started engaging more civically and building kind of long-term sustainable civic engagement in rural spaces, something that never existed before, and we really identified that we wanted to work on. Some of the biggest struggles we have when we started doing this work is really finding the folks and engaging the folks, not only in a volunteer place. Working class people have a lot on their tables. Working class people are trying, to work their jobs, take care of their families, and to find time to volunteer. They do that, and they do it so well. One of the biggest opportunities, kind of problems that we're looking to solve is how do we engage folks on a volunteer basis long enough and robust enough to then start looking to employ folks and start bringing folks in to really do this work. It's important work, and work this important should be work that people can make a living doing, and really growing that talent. And finding that talent in rural spaces was difficult, but highly rewarding, and we've been able to do that, I think, very well. So throughout the state, we have about 6 offices, and they're located in Pinal, Pima, Yuma, Mojave, Coconino, and Cochise County. And we're running various programs from Get Out the Vote, C3 engagement programs, nonpartisan civic engagement, voter registration. A big and exciting part of our programming is youth leadership, and then general organizing around various organizational issues, various issues within the community. So organizing in Cochise County might look a little bit different than organizing in Mojave County or Yuma County, where the issues on the ground are different. Yeah, it's really important. When we formed the organization, we did see people trying to engage locally, civically with community members, but they were more from national or state level organizations that weren't rooted in the community. That didn't really sit well with the folks in our community. We had our own issues we needed to work through. So something in Pinal where housing is a big crisis throughout the whole state, but really has been happening in Pinal for years at this point, would be different than Yuma, where a lot of our youth engagement is focused on border infrastructure and creating more opportunities for folks in the Yuma proper, but also surrounding areas like San Luis and Somerton. Throughout the state, water is a huge issue, but very, very focused in Cochise County and then Pinal County with farmers and housing. The water issues are something that really come up big in these places. And so being able to, not wanting to just drop in and tell communities what to care about, being able to integrate ourselves and our staff are from these communities and ask them, what are we looking for? What are you looking for? What can we help build or change in their community that would make life better? We all have a shared purpose, and the folks that we find and the folks that find us, we are very lucky to have this aligned purpose and to have a goal in mind. And what really motivates people, and it's in different regions, right, all different things, is that we are asking them what they care about. We are asking them the direction that they want to go with their lives and with the direction their communities want to go. And we're all headed in a similar direction. When you have a place like Yuma, the opportunities don't always exist to chart our own paths as community members, and I think that we give that avenue. So by being able to ask the folks in Yuma, they feel like we're pulling them into the process, and we are. And they help shape the direction that's going, and nothing is more motivated than making sure the people on the ground, the ones we're trying to motivate, are actually the people leading the change. And I think that's what makes a big difference with the folks we work with in our organization and volunteer base. That's an important question. Polarizing really affects the work we do here, and we do nonpartisan work. We just feel like being engaged, having access to the ballot, voting, making sure that we're able to register and that our registrations are going to be count and that our votes are going to be count are all very nonpartisan issues. And the polarization now creates a dynamic where if the right's moving more to the right, these nonpartisan issues to some folks might feel more partisan, and they're not. They're just access to our civic, to be able to fruitfully carry out our civic duty as citizens, and it's not a partisan issue. And so when we have folks in the field knocking on doors to try to get out the vote because it's the right thing, it's our duty, when we have folks in the field registering people to vote and engaging people to become poll watchers or just be a part of their civic infrastructure, it can be really, it can be a tough hill to climb with some folks, in the periphery on the outside that want to call that partisan, and they really inject a lot of polarization into that when we just got people that are out there trying to do good things and get out the vote and just to, like I said, perform our civic duty unencumbered, as I think is our right. And so it does affect us a lot, and it's a lot on the team. There are definitely worries and safety concerns. There are a lot of people that talk and thread online, whether it's local or national, and I think that does have our team worried at times. It's always existed. Issues with polarization have always existed in rural spaces. It is very clear that it's a lot more now. It's a lot more now. We started doing this work and we ran a great GOTV program in 2020, much smaller, only here in Pinal County. And 22 was, a midterm. There is a clear difference in what we're experiencing in the field, how regular citizens who might not agree with what we're doing, the confidence at which they feel like they can approach our canvassers or staff in a negative way, and nothing has escalated, and we have a really robust safety policies and procedures to follow. But people are more and more open to approaching our folks with a negative tone, and it is worrisome. It is a big difference. So what RAZE is doing right now is really empowering communities and getting out the vote, as well as empowering them to make decisions in these spaces as well. When we build up to these to the work we're doing in the programs, we're really hand in hand with the community, whether that's Yuma, Cochise, Flagstaff, all over the state. And currently we have folks going door to door, and what's really big and different about RAZE and exciting is that every one of the canvassers that's going door to door in their communities is from those communities, and that definitely did not happen prior to 2020. And I had seen folks come in, I think I had mentioned earlier that folks from in-state or out-of-state would really drop in and bring teams from who knows where, and it just doesn't feel right to be a community member and have someone come in and tell us what's right for us. And so the long-term work RAZE has been doing is really asking the community, being in conversation with the community, and having the community lead. And so that's why all of our canvassers and our staff are from rural spaces. We also want to do right by our community, and we know that this is work, and folks don't have a lot of time to volunteer, and those who do, and we're very excited for them and to have them. But organizing and doing right by our community means providing, as stable and long-term jobs as we can, and when I think about, especially in Yuma, which is one of our most exciting spaces, is you have a lot of military base there, you have a lot of paramilitary organizations there. You have agriculture and farmers. And then you kind of have an economy based on servicing those folks. And what was really exciting about Yuma and why we have so much staff and it's one of our most robust regions is we created an opportunity for folks to be employed to make a difference in their own lives. Not just to be employed to service other folks doing other jobs in the community, but to really work and focus on themselves. So RAZE was founded in Pinal County, but very quickly knew that the impact we were making was significant enough to start to move throughout the state. And we had an incredible opportunity in 2021 to work on redistricting. And that really meant looking at Arizona more holistically and making sure that rural communities throughout the state had a say in the redistricting process. And it's not about that program in particular, but it's about, if we're going to be in rural spaces, we're going to be advocating for rural spaces, then we need to answer the call when those gaps need to be filled, right? And so that was kind of the catalyst for expanding into Yuma County. That was the catalyst for expanding into Coconino County was the next one in the Flagstaff area. And so it really is born of, we want to be the resource and we want to step up and we want to meet the call. And once we do that, we're engaging with communities and we're finding more issues out, and then it just gets deeper and deeper. You have to meet the next moment and the next moment. And you really have a shared, you're really working on a shared project with the community on really growing some of these, really meeting the needs of the communities. Like in Yuma, there's a need for civic engagement, period. You move into there and you realize there's just a huge need for youth engagement and youth leadership. And then we have our youth leadership program, Raise Leaders, that then engages the youth there, and you just find that there is just such an appetite for it. So you just meet the moment deeper and you come more ingrained. But the more ingrained you become, you engage more people that just want to turn around and do the work with you as well, and you really build communities. And then in Coconino, the same way, you know, we have water issues. There were COVID resources that we were trying to provide in that time of need in 2020, 21, and 22, along with the community as well. And even down in Cochise and Mojave, all the issues are different, but once we are there to really, we build the capacity so we can meet the moment and meet the need. And once we're there, we work to stay and we work to find the next need. And in that process, like I had mentioned, we continue to grow the footprint, but also the network of rural Arizona engagement and how we engage with communities. So some of the differences between working in rural communities and then working in metropolitan areas, and there's so many positives that I'm sure that they have. What we really focuses on is that we have each other. That there are few, right? And there are many, but there are few, and we really have to depend on each other because there's no one to fall back on. You know, when you are going to be putting together a listening session with 15 community members, there's a tight-knit camaraderie there that whatever the next step of this listening session and whatever action we're going to take as a small group in this community is going to make an impact that we are visibly going to be able to see here. And so there is a depending on one another and a camaraderie that's built through that in rural spaces that I don't know if I've ever seen it in more metropolitan spaces. So the way we determine what a rural community is very interesting. You have, you know, I'm sure like federal definitions when you come down to census on population density. And so that's definitely the starter point. I grew up in Casa Grande, I grew up in Coolidge, Maricopa, Arizona City, all of these really small rural towns. And I definitely know that there are far more rural towns. What helps us determine this is, are they getting the resources needed to affect change in their community and to, you know, affect change in the state? And if you have a place like Yuma that is just this robust, well-populated place, but so far from any of the other metropolitan areas, there's such a need for youth engagement, civic engagement, connecting people down there with the capital so that they can advocate for their communities. And that's the way RAZE really looks at that, is that not only is it this kind of definition of what is a rural space, but where is the need and what's not being met and how can we meet that need. And a lot of the times, if not every time, it always comes down to rural communities. We don't do work in Metro Pima or Maricopa County, so that's the way we kind of figure out where to flow in rural. What I would tell folks in rural Arizona about getting involved is that they don't have to feel like they're alone, that they don't have to feel like they have to push this boulder uphill on their own. Our organization, Rural Arizona Engagement, is there to be a resource and there to be a beacon. So if your values are values that care about your community, about your family, about fulfilling our or your civic duty, then RAZE is a home for you. And if your values are for empowering rural communities, people of color, those who have been disenfranchised in all of the history of this country and this state, RAZE is also a place for you. So we would love you to engage with us. We're on all social media at Rural AZ Engage, and you can find us at www.raze.org. Thank you.